The view is a far cry from the cramped cubicle where I once sat, hidden behind a partition, overhearing words that would change the course of my career and ultimately my life. It was a typical Tuesday evening. The office had mostly cleared out, but I was still at my desk, poring over a project I was determined to perfect. The soft glow of my computer screen illuminated my small workspace, casting shadows on the partition that separated me from the rest of the office. I had always been a hard worker, often staying late to ensure every detail was just right. It was this dedication that I thought would propel me forward in my career. As I sat there, lost in concentration, I heard the familiar voice of my boss, Mark, speaking in hushed tones nearby. At first, I paid it no mind, assuming it was just another late-night conversation about deadlines or client meetings. But then I heard my name, and my ears perked up involuntarily. "He'll never succeed in this field," Mark said, his voice dripping with a dismissiveness that made my stomach churn. "He just doesn't have what it takes." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs as if I'd been punched in the gut. My fingers froze over my keyboard, my mind reeling as I tried to process what I'd just heard. Surely, I must have misunderstood. Mark had always been supportive, or so I thought. He had praised my work ethic, complimented my attention to detail. How could he think I didn't have what it takes? But as the conversation continued, it became clear that I hadn't misheard. Mark went on to elaborate on my perceived shortcomings, my lack of natural talent, my struggle with certain aspects of the job, my inability to network effectively. Each word was like a dagger, piercing through the confidence I had worked so hard to build. I sat there, frozen, as Mark and my coworker wrapped up their conversation and left the office. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at my computer screen, the words blurring as tears welled up in my eyes. All the late nights, the extra hours, the sacrificed weekends, had they meant nothing? Was I really so incapable that my own boss had written me off completely? That night, I went home in a daze. I barely slept, tossing and turning as Mark's words echoed in my head. "He'll never succeed." The phrase played on repeat, a cruel mantra that threatened to undermine everything I had worked for. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions at work, hyper-aware of every interaction with Mark and my coworkers. Did they all think the same way? Had I been fooling myself this entire time, thinking I had a future in this field? The doubt was all-consuming, threatening to swallow me whole. But as the initial shock began to wear off, something else started to stir within me. A spark of defiance, a burning desire to prove Mark wrong. Who was he to decide my future? Who was he to limit my potential? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just at Mark, but at myself for allowing his words to affect me so deeply. It was then that I made a decision. I wouldn't let Mark's opinion define me. Instead, I would use it as fuel, as motivation to push myself harder than ever before. I would show him and everyone else exactly what I was capable of. From that day forward, I approached my work with a newfound determination. I arrived at the office earlier, stayed later, and used every spare moment to improve my skills. I signed up for online courses, devouring information about our industry and honing my expertise. I sought out mentorship opportunities, reaching out to successful individuals in my field and soaking up their wisdom like a sponge. At work, I volunteered for every challenging project, even those that seemed beyond my current abilities. I pushed myself out of my comfort zone, tackling tasks that once would have intimidated me. When I struggled, I didn't give up. Instead, I worked harder, stayed later, and refused to let any obstacle defeat me. Networking, which had always been a weakness of mine, became a priority. I forced myself to attend industry events, to strike up conversations with strangers, to put myself out there in ways that had once terrified me. It was uncomfortable at first, even painful at times, but I persevered. With each interaction, I grew more confident, more assured in my ability to connect with others. Months passed, and slowly but surely, I began to see changes. My work improved dramatically. Projects that once would have taken me days to complete now took hours. I found myself coming up with innovative solutions to problems, impressing clients and colleagues alike. My newfound networking skills led to valuable connections and opportunities one never would have had before. Mark noticed the change too, though he never mentioned our overheard conversation. He began to assign me more important tasks, to rely on me for crucial projects. I could see the surprise in his eyes when I exceeded his expectations time and time again. But I never let on that I had heard his words that night. I didn't need his approval anymore. I was doing this for myself. As my skills and reputation grew, so did my ambitions. I began to realize that my potential extended far beyond the confines of my current position, beyond even the company itself. I started to explore other opportunities, to imagine a future where I wasn't constrained by anyone's limited perception of my abilities. When a job opening came up at a prestigious firm in our industry, I didn't hesitate to apply. The position was several levels above my current role, a leap that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. But I knew I was ready. The interview process was grueling, but I approached it with the same determination that had driven me for the past year. I showcased not just my skills and experience, but the passion and drive that had become an integral part of who I was. The day I received the job offer was one of the proudest moments of my life. As I stood in Mark's office, handing in my resignation, I couldn't help but think back to that night behind the partition. If only he could have seen then what I was capable of. But in that moment, I realized something important. His opinion didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what I thought of myself, what I knew I could achieve. Now, years later, as I look out over the city from my corner office, I can't help but feel a sense of gratitude for that painful moment of overhearing. As hurtful as Mark's words were, they became the catalyst for my success. They pushed me to dig deeper, to work harder, to become more than anyone, including myself, thought possible. My journey taught me several invaluable lessons. First, that other people's opinions of us don't define our potential. Mark's assessment of my abilities was just that, his opinion. It wasn't a fact, and it certainly wasn't my destiny. We all have the power to shape our own futures, regardless of what others might think. Secondly, I learned the incredible power of self-belief and determination. When I stopped seeking validation from others and started believing in myself, everything changed. The confidence I gained from proving myself to myself was far more powerful than any external validation could ever be. Thirdly, I discovered that setbacks and criticism, as painful as they might be, can be incredible motivators if we choose to use them that way. Instead of letting Mark's words defeat me, I let them drive me. Every doubt, every criticism became fuel for my fire, pushing me to work harder and achieve more. Lastly, I learned the importance of continuous growth and self-improvement. The skills and knowledge I gained in my quest to prove Mark wrong didn't just help me in that job. They became the foundation for my entire career. The habit of constantly learning and pushing myself has served me well in every role I've had since. As I reflect on my journey, I realize that in a strange way, I owe Mark a debt of gratitude. His doubts became the catalyst for my success, pushing me to heights I might never have reached otherwise. It's a reminder that sometimes, our greatest motivation can come from the most unexpected and even painful places. To anyone facing doubt or criticism, I say this: don't let it defeat you. Let it drive you. Use it as fuel to propel yourself forward. Believe in yourself, work hard, and never stop growing. Success is the best revenge, but more importantly, it's the greatest gift you can give yourself. Today, as I lead my own team, I make it a point to believe in the potential of every individual. I strive to be the kind of leader who inspires and uplifts, who sees the best in people even when they might not see it in themselves. Because I know firsthand the power of belief, both the damage that lack of belief can do, and the incredible heights that true belief can help us achieve. That overheard conversation behind the partition was a turning point in my life. It was painful, yes, but it was also the beginning of a journey that led me to where I am today. And for that, I am eternally grateful. Sometimes, the best motivation really does come from those who doubt us. It's up to us to take that doubt and turn it into the driving force behind our success.